Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back in another video. Sorry about the lighting. My mum was complaining about electricity. I still live with my mum. So, anywho, what was I going to say? Sorry. Yeah, and I've left it quite late to this video. So again, sorry if the lighting is not as good as I'd like it to be or whatnot. But I hope you enjoyed this video anyway. Obviously, it's another one. It's another one of my football-related videos. But I wanted to talk about something I was thinking about earlier, which is what Italian football or Serie A or Italian football generally could learn from English football, especially the E.P.L. And I wanted to make a lot of think through a list of sort of things that Serie A especially could learn from, let's say, the E.P.L. So I thought it would be easier to do, obviously, in list form. So I was thinking, like, what does the E.P.L have or do better, perhaps, than Serie A? And considering like the difference between the national team, I'd say Italy is more successful, obviously, with 4 World Cups and 2 Euros compared to England's 1 solitary World Cup. Although it could be different in the future with youth development, depending on how things go with England's youth setup, with like St George's Park, which is one thing I suppose Italian football could learn from, perhaps, which is another thing Italian football could learn from, like France and other countries that, including Spain, which have developed their youth. But in terms of the league, I was thinking, I read something a while back which talked about the things that the E.P.L has in terms of an advantage over Serie A, and if I can remember, I can remember specifically one of the things that came up. So I'd say one thing is the language. I suppose English is by far the second most, the most spoken second language, I think, in the world. I mean, I think the Chinese probably. I mean, Chinese is probably the most spoken language because of the size of its population, and then the fact that they only have 2 languages or whatever. I think it's Cantonese and Mandarin, unlike India, which has so many languages. But in terms of second spoken languages, or, English is the first language, probably, obviously by far, and it's probably, I suppose, it's the most spoken language overall. But yeah, obviously it's the most spoken language, and you can. It's like they say, if you can speak English, unlike me, you can do business anywhere. So I think that's one advantage. Someone was talking about an advantage that England has, or the English league has, the E.P.L, as I say, has over Serie A, which is that it's spoken. English is spoken all over the world, basically. I'm making a meal of it, but in explaining it. But so that's something that would be hard for Italian football to replicate. Obviously, they can't out English language the English kind of. But although, I mean, some people jokingly say that people from overseas can sometimes speak better English, but which is probably sometimes true. But obviously, they can't necessarily outdo the E.P.L on that one, but they can probably sort of have a lot of English content, which I suppose Serie A already does. So that's one thing they could do, is like try and put as much content out in English as possible. But I suppose another thing, maybe in terms of languages, is that I suppose a lot of these ideas could be copied now. Now I'm sharing them, but I was thinking about this when I went for a walk earlier. But I thought, I've not really thought it through, but I kind of have. But these ideas just came to me, and I thought it might be interesting in a video form. But so as I say, I mean, maybe Italian football can put content out in different languages, like Mandarin, Cantonese, Arabic, which they kind of already do, at least in Arabic. But they could expand to all possible different countries, and like speak their local languages. Whereas maybe people say that England can be a bit reluctant to learn other languages for whatever reason. Sorry. A second thing, moving on, is marketing and branding and that kind of thing. So PR, marketing, branding, and that kind of thing, which to me means pretty much the same thing, which is putting themselves out there, and letting people know about them, and that kind of thing. So I suppose English football does that really well, and it's something that Italian football would needs to catch up on, I suppose, if it's going to compete And as a fan of Italian football, I would love to see that. But I think that it would be pretty interesting to see what ideas Italian football could come up with to help themselves market themselves and brand themselves all around the world. I talk sometimes about how I want to put together a neurodiverse neurodiverse group, or neurodivergent group, whichever, like people with dyslexia and ADHD and whatnot. And I think our creative skills, this is one of the areas where we could benefit in Italian football and show what we could do for Italian football if I could get that group together, possibly Eurasians as well. For some reason I put Eurasians in speech marks, I don't know why, but Eurasians like myself could help to promote Italian football in and across Asia, around Asia and that kind of thing, for instance. But I think with neurodiverse people, we could use our creativity, our neurodivergent creativity, to help Italian football with marketing, branding, and that sort of thing. And it'd be interesting if Italian football could market itself better and get lots of investment. I know they're trying to do this already, and they're kind of looking into it, but I hope they look into the best possible TV deals and have like Serie A marketed all around the world. So it's shown on TVs all around the world and that kind of thing, in pubs and bars and whatnot. And hopefully people will pay a bit of money to watch it, maybe. If that's what helps, or whatever it is that will benefit Italian football. So obviously that money coming in. I suppose if they gave it away for free, I mean, sometimes maybe that is like a loss leading sort of thing, where if people go and watch the football, they talk about it more, and in the longer term, maybe they'll buy the kits and Italian football will become more popular, so they can make more money that way. But the E.P.L has a lot of money from Sky in terms of broadcast rights. So I think their TV deal is 5 billion or possibly even more than that. So it'd be hard for Italian football to compete. But I'd love to see Serie A having so many different investors and sponsors as a league as well, and like the Italian Super Cup. Again, I think Serie A is looking into this with like Wall Street, and even having football matches in some of the Arab nations like Saudi Arabia and places like that, places in the Middle East basically. So that could show that they're trying to seek more investment from those places, which is pretty cool, I think, in many ways. But I'd love to see how Italian football can market and what they could do, and maybe even see some of their weaknesses in the E.P.L if there are any, so they can look at what they could do even better, or some of the mistakes to avoid or whatnot. And I hope if Serie A becomes more popular, obviously they'll get better TV rights and deals and things like that, which I hope, as well as selling more merchandise as well, which I hope will bring in more investment, so Italian football can bring in those players, coaches, managers and whatnot, directors of football, dietitians and whatever it takes to make a great team, which I dream to see. Number 3, the fan experience. I think English football has done well to like kick out, or at least limit hooliganism and like monitor it and try to stamp out racism and all that. And I think again Italian football is trying to do that as well, although it is a difficult one to tackle. But if like politicians, councillors and those involved in football and work together with the police and even businesses and whatnot, and even fan groups talk about, like instead, for instance, learning to be involved in coaching and fundraising for your local club instead of being involved in hooliganism. Maybe that's naive of me, but that could be something that helps to benefit Italian football. I mean, normally I think the E.P.L has a good fan experience, but although I don't go to many games, well, I don't really go to any games myself, but I think that it is quite expensive though. So some people would rather go to Germany or France or places like that and even travel to those nations and watch a game because it's probably even cheaper, even though it involves travel, because a lot of E.P.L clubs are quite expensive as they got more wealthy. So that's probably something Italian football could look into, like making sure that ticket prices aren't too high perhaps, or maybe it could increase for VIP visitors but be kept lower for the working classes or less well off. Maybe they could look into ideas like that. And I suppose another thing is youth development. I think English football's done quite well with youth development, giving young players a chance, and I wonder how Serie A could do that and still maintain like bringing in the best possible players and winning trophies, hopefully especially in Europe. and off the top of my head, I can't really. I think there were the Calciopoli scandal really rocked the town for one and sent it downhill, and it hasn't really recovered till, or it's starting to recover now. But maybe we're seeing, hopefully, we're seeing the recovery now. But that's another thing that perhaps Italian football could look at how to ensure those scandals don't happen and talk about, like Juventus were involved in those scandals, but actually it set the club back quite a lot. They had to start gaining a lower division, so it shows that cheating in this case didn't really pay. So people were talking about it recently. They were talking about the controversies of VAR, and they think that some games are unfair. In a lot of fans were talking about Man City. I think from what comments I saw, maybe it was because it was a Man United fan channel, but it would be interesting. I think if the E.P.L was investigated and people found that it was a bit corrupt, I suppose they could go through the same sort of thing that Italian football went through before in the early 2000s, I think. But it's something I think Italian football should look at, how they can root out like prejudice, violence, and match fixing, corruption, breaking the law, and things like that. I think if you talk about, you'll actually do better off in the long term if you don't get involved in those things. Instead, possibly work with FIFA and UEFA to ensure that those are cut out of Italian football. And also, similar ideas could be used for Celtic, as I often say. But I think in the long term that could benefit Italian football a lot. And instead, they could look at how to bring in the best possible players, and maybe FIFA and UEFA could reward them for improving the image of the game. Generally, the beautiful game, as we call it. And I'm sure there was something else I was going to say, but I can't quite remember now because I was waffling away. But yeah, the Calciopoli scandal and things like that. And also, I think that was it. That was what I was going to say. There was like a financial crash in Italy before, and I think that was another comment that people made, that meant Italian football went downhill, and it has struggled to recover. But I think its economy is increasing. I only support Italy for football, so I don't really care too much for the economy or things like that. In fact, economics-wise, or in terms of finances or economy, I normally support countries that are colonized. So my one concession, as I say, is for football, where I support Italy. But I'd love to know what other people think about what you think Serie A could do to improve and catch up with the E.P.L and stroke or La Liga. In this case, I thought I'd talk about some of the things that the E.P.L has as an advantage. Maybe in the future I could do a video on what La Liga has as an advantage, perhaps like youth development. I can't really think of many other things, but I've got to admit, I think Spanish football does play a more sexy type of football, if you like the way they pass and move the ball. I think it's a lot cooler to watch. It pains me to say, but maybe that's something Italian football could also look at how to improve on, bringing in those skillful players, but also setting them free to attack teams a bit more. Again, another thing I talked about recently, like making Italian football more attacking. But as I say, please let me know in the comments what you think are some of the weaknesses of Italian football, what they could do to improve. What does the E.P.L do better? Another thing I almost forgot to mention as well is, and there might be one or two other things, I'm not sure, but I know I didn't properly list them as a number of things. So I think it's about 5 or 6 things, maybe roughly. And one of them is like, well, I suppose it goes with marketing and branding and whatnot, but the historical names of which teams like Liverpool and Man United, which are followed all around the world. I know AC Milan and probably even Inter Milan, Torino and Roma and teams like that might be known around the world, especially AC Milan, I think, and possibly Juventus, which I suppose Juventus is probably more popular in Italy itself, but around the world, I think. And I know I made a video again recently, only a couple of days, well, one day ago, in fact, on AC Milan fans around the world. But again, promoting Italian football across Africa and Asia and places like that, and maybe even if they did tours of Africa, Asia, Latin America, and places like that as much as possible. And once again, I'd love to like travel to parts of Asia and Africa and support neurodiverse schools, like dyslexia-friendly schools and that kind of thing. And in doing so, I hope to promote Italian football. Another thing I'd say they could do is give away kits to young children in parts of Africa and Asia. Again, a loss leading project, or projection, or whatever you call it, a loss leading product. So they give away the products, but in the long term, that will mean that those people will hopefully go and buy those kits And I'm just going to finish off. I know this video has gone a bit longer than planned as ever, but I generally struggle to get to the point. I do apologise, but on that note, I was thinking, what if Italian football has deals like Arsenal has with Rwanda? What if they have that with all possible countries as well? Celtic having that with all possible countries. So Malaysia, China, India, Japan, Korea, and other nations. Rwanda, one of them, could be one. As many nations as possible, basically, have like sponsorship deals with Italian football and stroke or Celtic, perhaps together, where they say like visit, say Malaysia or any other possible nation in the world, and they help to build kits, and the people in those nations help to make those kits and make some of the money. But also Italian football and stroke or Celtic, respectively, makes money from them. So hopefully it'll be mutual benefit. So the designers in those countries who design the t-shirts or whatever, hopefully will benefit, and also Italian football and stroke or Celtic will get some of the money as well. And also they could give so with Rwanda they sponsor Arsenal. I think it might be 25 million a year or something like that. Maybe not quite as much as that, I don't know. But they could have those sorts of deals. And again, the more popular Serie A gets with the rising popularity, the more they'll be able to make for marketing as well as television rights. But yeah, I'd love to know what you think about my quirky ideas and thoughts. If you find any interesting, or if you have any ideas of your own. Anyway, I'm out. Peace out.